Prosecution, are you ready to give your closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Innocent men don't have knives covered in cop blood. 5'10", 200 pounds, built like a tank and a rebel with a cause. The defendant is guilty of the crimes he has been charged with. We've learned from all of this trial, from each of the witnesses, that the defendant has anger management problems. He has a violent history. He's beaten people before, and he has a problem with authority. And that's what got him in trouble on that day of the Thanksgiving pageant. That's why he's been charged with disorderly conduct. He's yelling at students. That's why he's been charged with assault and battery, because he took that knife and he tried to attack an officer. And that's why he's been charged with assault of a member of the police force. Again, assault and battery. He assaulted an officer, 2 crimes, and he's guilty of each of them. So let's keep it simple, right? We've seen all the testimony. We have all the evidence. Let's put it into place now. Start with disorderly conduct. Person commits disorderly conduct when that person acts with the intent to provoke a breach of peace. That means annoying, being disturbing, interfering with, being offensive to others. If you've done any of those things, you've committed disorderly conduct. Secondly, if you're congregating with others on a public space, as the defendant did with his friend, and he's ordered by the police to move, he has also committed disorderly conduct. So let's remember why the police were there that day. The cops were asked to come deal with harassment that the students had been experiencing every day, especially between the hours of 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. The administration had called the police specifically to deal with these kinds of incidents. They've been calling out students' names, shouting expletives, and making threatening gestures. And that's why we can look at why the defendant was there and why he is guilty of disorderly conduct. He was hanging out smoking with his buddy, having a good old time laughing. He was yelling at students and bullying people exactly between the hours that people were seeing problems. He was harassing students. He was there to make fun of people, right? There was this nice Thanksgiving Day pageant. People were in costumes. They probably put into a lot of work into this. And what they had to experience when they walked out of the school was this defendant who would shout at you, make fun of you, tease you, gobble gobble. He was bullying people. The defendant, he's just one bad turkey. That's the bottom line. I like to think of it as the gobble gobble rule, right? 1 gobble, shame on you. 2 gobbles, that's disorderly conduct. The police saw the defendant. He had been yelling at students. The police saw that. That was one incident, okay? They're like, okay, well, we got something going on, but we're not sure that this is disorderly conduct yet. But then they came back. They came back for that second round, and they were still at it, gobbling away. That's disorderly conduct. Beyond reasonable doubt, that's a high bar. But disorderly conduct, that's not a high bar to reach, in that we have it all. We've seen the defendant, he's yelled at these students, he's annoyed them, he's made himself a nuisance. And if that wasn't enough, he took it to the next level. That's where we ended up with that bloody knife. That's when he took that disorderly conduct and made it something more, where he really cemented his crimes that day. That's when he assaulted an officer. Assault and battery. Assault, you threaten someone with harm. Battery, you conduct that harm. Assault on a member of the police force. You can't resist arrest. The police tried to arrest him. He resisted. That's a crime. It doesn't even matter whether the arrest is lawful. It just matters whether he resisted. And that's what he did. That incident, it turned bloody. The police had come up to them. He had seen the police previously. And the police asked to see his ID, asked who he was, asked what he was doing there. Did he respond? No. He didn't say anything. The police asked again, expecting a response again. Nothing. He said, Nothing. That's when the police walked closer and threatened him with arrest, and what happened? He smiled at them, put that devious grin on his face, and he reached for his pocket. He pulled out a knife. He pulled out a knife, and that's when this altercation happened. That's when he fought the law. Unfortunately for him, the law won. You've heard the defense counsel talk about this excessive force. That's what's going on. But let me tell you, losing a fight does not make you innocent. You can't just pull a knife out, and if you're the one who's more injured, that doesn't make you the innocent party. He's the one who initiated the altercation. He's willing to admit it himself. He says, when the officer grabbed his arm after he had pulled out that knife, I was telling him to cut it out and try to pull away. He admitted in his own testimony he was resisting arrest. The officer said, we are struggling because he doesn't want to give me the knife. The broken wrist is evidence of resisting. He didn't let go of that knife until his wrist was broken. He was fighting the entire way. He had reached into that pocket. The officer had grabbed him, but he was still fighting. He even ended up stabbing himself. And you know, when an officer is trying to deal with somebody who has a weapon like that, they want to control that weapon. The police officer was trying his best to control that weapon, but he still managed to cut the officer's arm because he was struggling and fighting the entire time. That's why he's guilty of these crimes, is because he has this bloody knife. His own knife is covered in the blood of officers. That's why he's guilty. It's simple as that. And I've misplaced my clicker. That's fine. We can move on. The delinquent defendant. The evidence has demonstrated the defendant has a history of violence. He has major anger management problems. He has a lack of respect for authority. That's why each of these witnesses that have spoken have attested to this. When the counselor spoke on the stand, he said that he got into a fight. It was so terrible. There was broken noses, black eyes, and no one tried to break it up. It was so violent that people were scared to approach and put an end to this. He had such a reputation that he was respected and scared all of the students. He scared faculty members. Teachers themselves were afraid of him, and for good reason. Again, 5'10", 200 pounds. Major anger management problems. When his best friend came to the stand to testify, he had said he does have a temper. He looks and acts older than a high school kid.
2 minutes.
He admitted this. His best friend had said he had anger problems, and he made it clear that day when he tried to fight that officer and put that knife in the officer. He admitted, I guess I hadn't worked out my anger management problems, and that's why he's guilty of the crime. A lack of respect for authority. That officer came up to him, made a request, he pulled out a knife. The defendant has lied to you time and time again. He said it's not his fault, it's the first trouble I've been in a long time. He's not willing to take responsibility, and that's why it's your job to make him take that responsibility. He says he knows the rules of the school, but he also knows that carrying a switchblade on campus is against those rules. He says it's only for peeling fruit and stuff, that it's not dangerous, that it's dull. Yet when he cut himself, he needed 4 stitches. Yet when he cut the officer, he bled red just like the rest of us. Beyond a reasonable doubt. The evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed each of these crimes. It's like flying on an airplane. If you step onto an airplane, you might feel some doubts. You're like, ooh, I don't know. What if something goes wrong? What if the pilot's like a drunk? I don't know. I'm scared. I'm a little worried. You're never confident that an airplane ride is going to go well. But a reasonable doubt is one which would make you step off that airplane. One which would make you look out the window and see there's oil leaking out. There's something really wrong with this airplane. I have reasonable doubt. I need to get off this plane. I don't think we're going to make it safely to where we're going. This case is filled with evidence that ensures there's going to be a very safe flight. The defendant has a first-class ticket, booked straight to guilty town. And that's why I ask return a verdict of guilty on each and every count. Thank you.